Hello, welcome to BACKCHAT. We've got ourselves a special guest. It's Rawkus. Never had him on the show before, and didn't have him on the show while he was in FaZe. Now he's not FaZe anymore. Now he's a member of Sentinels, the newest hot commodity, the talk of the town. The Valorant competitive subreddit was blowing up with what the fuck, because I think it was one of the most unexpected moves that we could have come up with. So that's where I want to start, honestly, Rawkus, is where did this come from? Where did this idea of becoming the coach from Sentinels come from? Did you reach out? You just had this epiphany? Did the players been working on it for a while? Like, where did this all begin?
Yeah, so we got eliminated from Champions when I was on FaZe, and it was like there was nothing to do until February, like if you're a player right now, basically, unless you're in Champs. So I reached out to Sentinels. I reached out to ShahZaM. I asked them if they wanted some help for Berlin, like for Champs runs, and they wanted help, and they were all like super on board and super excited. And they all like respect like how I think about the game. So it was just really easy. It was like within like 2 days of me asking, it was like, let's go, let's do it.
Wow.
So it was really quick.
Where has that like relationship been built up in the past? Is that just from talking to them, just playing ranked, or is that from being scrim partners, or where is that relationship where they respect you come from? Because I'm sure they don't have that same opinion about just any fucking Joe Big Bollocks who comes out of an LCQ team and says, hey, I'll be the coach for you.
Yeah, so it just comes from like the course of playing against them for like an entire year, right? I've known them pretty decently because, like I said, Thomas was my first teammate ever back in Overwatch when we were on FaZe originally. So like I knew him for a while. Plus, like when I was in Houston for Outlaws, like Zoms and Dapper both came over to my house like often. They came over like twice or something. I like a relationship with like Dapper too, and then like I like Shaz because like we played together in Valorant and like ranked. And then the only person I didn't really know was Tens, I guess, and like Sick, but they were pretty much on board too. So I don't know. It was just like, I guess like as a player, I think I earned their respect over playing over a year. So they just kind of like, I don't know. It was kind of like that. It was, yeah.
They've definitely said in the past, right, that they respect player experience quite a lot, like all the Sentinels guys, in terms of like what they were looking for a coach. I think this has been like a topic of conversation for ages about Sentinels getting a coach, but it's only recently came up off the back of like Berlin, where they've had their most recent dip in performance. But yeah, it's was that definitely like, would you say that that's been a part of it, was that you had that playing experience?
No, for sure. They definitely did want someone who didn't have player experience. They don't want they know how to play. This is the thing. They know how to play the game, obviously better than everyone right now. They had one bad tournament and they won everything besides that, right? So they don't need to be told how to play the game. They just need like a different perspective sometimes, like a refreshener, right?
Yeah.
And you can't get that. You can't get that from someone who doesn't play the game at the highest level. So like, I feel like I'm probably like one of the only people right now that isn't playing at the moment with that experience to be able to help them. So I mean, that's exactly what they wanted. So like it just worked out perfectly. It's like
it's a very rare position to find yourself in, because there's not many players. When you said yourself that you still want to compete potentially after the champs run, but there's not many players who are making that kind of role with that kind of experience, that role shift at the moment. It's interesting. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, and I've always been a player too who's like, I thrive off like my mind, I guess. Like I don't thrive purely off mechanics, obviously.
Sure.
But, like I feel like I think about the game more than other players, and that's like kind of beneficial to like doing this for me right now. Like I'm learning from them and also helping them learn how I think about the game, because like FaZe and Sentinels were polar opposite teams. Like obviously, right? Like one team like completely just like ran it down, and like but we ran it down with like some purpose. Like it seemed like it wasn't like strategic, but we had like some shots behind it, like some ideas and like how we wanted to play it. But like eventually it like slowly wore off, right? People figured it out. So but there's like stuff that I could definitely help them with. That's like my goal right now. So
I feel like that's one of the critiques of people that don't understand the move or feel like it's a weird move is, well, Rawkus came from a team that played, this inting style. What's he going to be able to bring to the table to help Sentinels who play in a more, it is a loose manner, but in a structured loose manner, and were able to dismantle Rawkus' team whenever they played against them? I feel like that will be a pretty common criticism from fans who don't understand the interplay there. So what do you feel like you would respond to that with, that idea that you're being rated there by the intricacy and strategic level of the team that you played for?
Yeah, so that's a fair assessment though. They did pretty much dismantle us when we played against them, but I think like you have to think about it from like a role perspective. Like my role specifically in the team wasn't able to run it down. I enabled people to run it down. So like I had to think about the game in a little different aspect of that. Like I can't run in with them, but like I was able to think of like ways to help them like be aggressive. So like for like instance, like Shaz right now, he's playing Sova. Like I'm trying to help him like understand how I thought about the game, because like he's really new to the role, but I think it's like he's really smart. Like he'll be able to pick up on that really quick because just the type of player he is. I think like the public perspective on like what I can teach them is just like, I personally, when I played, I thought about what I could do to maximize my role, since my role was mainly being used to enable like Baby Bay and Corey. And that was like strictly it. I didn't really have anything for myself. I didn't really get any utility to help myself like do stuff like that. So I'll be able to like help them think of like cheesy ways to use utility and stuff like that for like the roles I played, like Viper, and I played Sky too, and Sova and stuff like that. Basically, I have like a lot of cheesy ideas that like a lot of people didn't get to see, but there's a lot of cheesy stuff that I did and like worked off. It was like outsmarting people. So like they obviously have seen some of the stuff I've been explaining to them. It like works every single time so far. So just like little stuff like that. I can't go into detail without leaking.
Sure,
stuff,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. It's like it's I don't know. That's how I've always thought about the game. Like I want to cheese people, and I want to my goal when I play against people is I want to tilt them. Like I want them to be like salty as fuck. I think that's funny as shit, dude. I think that makes my day. Like I want them to be boomed. I want them to not be able to play the game anymore. Like I want to mentally fuck with them. I want them to think that like I'm a dumb player when I outsmart them. Like I don't know. I think it's funny as hell. Like I don't know. That's just
I understand, and I think that's also the mentality that some of the Sentinels players have as well, actually. Especially the aspect of like tilting your opponent. It's definitely the
teabagging stuff too, yeah.
Exactly. Do you feel excited to work with Sentinels because you can use those ideas that were in some sense limited by the way that FaZe was set up?
Yeah, so like I get this question kind of often in my stream because I've been streaming a little bit more to answer some questions, but like people have been asking me I just lost train of thought. People have been asking me like do I feel any pressure like moving over? Because like Sentinels, like if they don't win, I'm gonna get flamed essentially. And I was like, I don't really feel any pressure. The team's already like amazing. I just have to help them. I'm just gonna help them a little bit. I'm not gonna change their style. They know how to play the game. They feel like what happened and what went wrong last time is that they had a wrong read on the meta, and like that's like a fair assessment. They were playing like Phoenix and stuff, and other teams were playing Sky, and I think Sky was like really oppressive during that meta. So I'm just like helping them I think I always had a really good read on what the meta would be. But we were kind of limited on FaZe because we wanted to play double duelist setups like Raze and Jett like constantly. So like we weren't able to play like the roles like Sky and Jett and like these weird cheesy combos that like a lot of the European teams actually run really well. But all the Sentinels players are really open to playing different stuff, and like they want to play whatever the best is. So like I personally like I kind of diverted the question a little bit, but I don't personally feel any pressure from like any of that. I'm just gonna do my best job, and like I like the biggest reason why I made this move is I like challenging myself and making I guess like it's just challenging myself essentially. It's like a new chapter. I'm just gonna keep
of course
pushing myself. I don't want to feel comfortable. The second you feel comfortable, it's like someone else is gonna work harder and take your like essentially gonna take your job. Like I don't know. That's how I've always felt. Though.
What kind of structure then are you working with within Sentinels at the moment? Like it's early days because you've just joined the team, but you said that your kind of role is you're not going to be obviously telling them what to do, but you're going to be suggesting the way you put it, like the cheesy strats, and like cheesy shit. How does that work within the structure of like, because normally it was Shaz taking on all of the workload, like in terms of, or like a lot of the workload. I'm assuming there's like a lot of cooperation between the rest of the team in terms of server time and talking things through. But how are you going to be kind of like working your way in as well and assisting Shaz with that structure in Sentinels?
Yeah, so I know I said I don't want to really change how they play, but like there are like a couple of maps that I've like said, this is how I want you guys to play essentially. Cause I know we had success on it with FaZe. And I'm like, I like this idea and I want us to use this idea because I feel like you guys will make better decisions. Like they've been a team that like thrive in decision making, like in crucial moments. Which like you could say like FaZe when we were playing, we probably struggle sometimes with that. So they like can make the better decisions going. So like I kind of want them to do certain things and like try it for themselves and see how it feels. And if they like that, then they like that's the kind of stuff that I'll like be saying like I'll like step down or step up and like put like authority on because I think that like could be a really good idea, and if they agree with it then that's it. If they don't, then we'll discuss it. But they've been like super opening to trying everything, and so far it's been working. But it's still really early in the day like of scrimming because it's really early in the days of scrimming rather because all the teams that we're practicing against right now are rebuilding. So essentially most of the good practice that you're going to be getting is from Europe when we go over there in boot camp on the 20th. So like we're playing against all these like rebuilding teams right now, and you can't judge how practice is going based off a team that's rebuilding.
Of course.
The players who are trying out don't have structure, and it's just like just a bunch of different stuff. So I'm taking everything right now with a little bit of grain of salt, but it's just about getting back in the groove of it, you know.
Dude, from the sound of it though, it feels like the whereas the idea might have been, oh, Shaz needs somebody to just lighten the load a little bit, it feels like they've let you take the reins quite a bit for the beginning to see what works and see what doesn't, rather than limiting your role very specifically at the beginning to just be like, you're going to help Shaz with what he wants to do. It feels like it's a bit more open, and it's like, let's hear what the input is, and the team will filter out what they think is good or bad. Is that fair?
Okay, so I'll specify that a little bit more. So like let's for instance, like the first couple days I was in, I was like basically letting them do what they were used to for the past year. I just wanted to see what they were going, like how they operate, because it's a completely different structure, new environment. I'm not going to come in and just like be like a dictator. That'd be like dumb, right? I'm not trying to do any of that. So I was listening to like how they wanted to operate, and then now I'm like more and more putting my ideas out there, and they like the ideas and stuff like that. If they don't like the ideas, they'll argue back. But essentially every single person puts a lot of effort in, like a lot.
Yeah.
Every single person's like actively putting effort in. So it's not only Shaz, but Shaz does a lot of work too, like outside the server work. Like he does a lot of work against like other teams, counter-stratting, understanding their defaults, understanding their pistols. That's like where he thrives for. And then like you have players like Dapper and Sicker giving their input about like pretty much everything when it comes to like how they want to play. Like most of the times when you're preparing for yourself and not what the other team's going to do when you're doing these like server work, stuff like that. So it's like a lot of inside of the work is like Dapper and freaking Sick and Jazz and like me, right? And then like when they used to prepare for other people, Shaz doing a lot of work on enemy teams and stuff like that. That's as far as I know. I haven't got too deep into it yet because we haven't even prepared for anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we haven't even got to Berlin, so it's like still really new to me at least. But I'm just like I'm taking it slow, and everyone's like we're just like relaxing right now until we get to Berlin, because that's where all the good practice is going to be, because every team's rebuilding. So
I want to wind the clock back a little bit here and focus on you and your career for a moment after we've talked a little about Sentinels. So FaZe participated at LCQ, and you guys had initially thought that it was going to be a LAN event, and there's not like a large amount of travel because you guys were already based in LA to begin with as well. I was very excited to see the FaZe players play at LAN. I feel like the FaZe players are good at LAN. I feel like I know that from watching them play in Overwatch LANs over the years as well, and I had very confident assessment that you guys were going to do better at that event than would otherwise happen because it was online. And then the event fucking exploded. And that must have been incredibly frustrating from your perspective to have to deal with that. And I know there was a very like heartfelt interview afterwards where you were talking about how the year had gone so far too. What was the end of your time in FaZe like and that LCQ tournament?
I feel like the leading up to the LAN event, everything was like we were super good vibes. It was good practice. Everything was good. We're prepared to play a LAN because like we've been wanting to play a LAN so badly since we started playing on this team. But COVID like screwed everything over. We didn't qualify for the first LAN, didn't qualify for the second LAN. So we're like, fuck, we're going to have to play LCQ. And then they announced LCQ as a LAN, and we were super excited for it. And then leading up to it, everything was basically going like ideally. Because like, this is the thing. I'm not going to flame any other team, but there are so many players on other teams that are quite literally online players. Like they don't feel the pressure online, which is fair and fine. But the second they get to stage, they won't play as well. And so like we wanted to play on LAN, like particularly really badly against like the bracket we had, because we felt like we were going to be like we were going to roll through it, because like we kind of assumed that the players wouldn't be playing with like the same amount of confidence, right?
Right.
But once it got canceled and it went online, it was like we were grinding for like a month and a half straight. And they're like, great, we have to grind for like, we didn't know exactly how much longer because they didn't specify when LCQ was going to resume. So it was like another 3 weeks after that, where it's like, we prepared so much and we're so locked in that when like it got announced again, we were like, fuck, and now it's going to be online. It's like, it wasn't as exciting or thrilling for us, but it doesn't mean we change like how we approach it. It's just like, it just was like, we were less, I don't know. It's hard to explain, like, less hyped, I guess, because like it's just another online event essentially. But it's like it was crazy because it's an online event for champions, like the biggest event, which made no sense. Like it made sense because of what happened, but like I feel like it should have been another LAN somewhere to like make it happen. But I mean,
hold it inside the FaZe place. Just everyone.
They could have. They could have. Yeah, they have enough space. It could have been a LAN in there.
Yeah. For moving on from that as well, the interview that you did where you were talking, I think it was to Briggs, and you were saying you were kind of talking about the expectations versus results from the organization's point of view as well, because FaZe as an org took a big chance on you guys moving from Overwatch, and I think I'm speculating here, but I imagine that their perspective on it was, these guys are great at Overwatch. This game looks like a blend of kind of Overwatch abilities and CS. If they can get enough time to figure out how the CS part works and how the fundamentals go, they should be great at the game. And it felt like the expectations were met very early in the year when you went on that crazy run, and then they just kind of slowly petered out over the course of it. What was your perspective of working with the organization?
Oh, everything on the org side, honestly, was amazing. Like, I have zero complaints when it comes to the org side. Like, literally no complaints. Everything that everything that you could have won as a player, they basically gave to you. They gave you time. Like, they gave you, what I mean by time is that, like, we obviously needed some time to develop into, like, a top-tier team. And, like, I feel like every team had to, because they didn't really take the gamble on us being an Overwatch team coming to a game with Overwatch abilities. They came to us as, like, good players in a game that could adapt, and, like, it was a new game. So, like, because it's a new game, like, we were going to, like, try to be at the top of it early on, and I think we were. But I think what we failed at, like, we should have probably gotten a CS mind in the game earlier, just to understand, like, how the other teams think. Because the second we, like, started realizing how other teams think, like, the game felt a lot easier for us. And now, like, we found out that a little bit too late, and we missed a couple events from it. I feel like we started figuring it out towards, like, Berlin run, like our first Berlin run for Masters 2. When we played against Envy, and we played against, I think it was, like, LG and Rise. That's when we started figuring out how, like, other teams were thinking. That's like that. I feel like that was probably, even though Masters 2 was really well, I think that was our best event. It's, like, hard to explain. Just, like, the way we thought about the game. We kind of imposed our will Masters 1 and played anyway. Like, it doesn't matter how the other team played. We just, like, ran it down with them with reach and all the util we had, right? So teams didn't know how to play against that. But then, like, against in the Masters, what was it, 3 run? That was Masters 3, yeah. Sorry, Masters 3 run for Berlin. When we played against Envy and like that, we were trying to think about the game, like, how they were thinking about it. We were just trying to, like, anti-shot and, like, rotate around them and stuff like that. We were just playing way different than we used to. But I think they had way more experience doing it in the end, so they just made better, like, they made more better decisions in that, like, match, essentially. So they won a few more rounds, and then we just barely lost. So, but I felt like, personally, to answer the question about the org side, I feel like we let down the org essentially because I felt like we should have been a top 3 team, like, from the way we were playing, at least in practice, and we couldn't translate that into matches. Like, we ended up, like, I know this sounds, like, cheesy, but we lost to T1, I think, for Iceland, and T1 was 1 map away from knocking out Sentinels from Iceland, and Sentinels won that whole series, like, that whole event, right? And then we also lost to V1, who also qualified for Iceland. We always ended up losing to the teams that did very, very well in the event. Like, for instance, like, for Masters 3, we lost to Envy. Envy got second in Berlin. For what's it called? For LCQ, we lost to Rise. Rise got second in the event. We always, like, end up playing, like, the darkhorse teams really quick, and we give them the motivation to, like, kind of, like, just to go on their crazy runs. I feel like that always happens to us for some reason. But I'm not gonna make excuses. Like, that's just how it felt. But we got a little bit unlucky sometimes. That's, like, kind of my thought process about it.
Right. Yeah. But at the end of the day, if you wanted to be that top 3 team, you got to beat those
everyone.
teams, right?
Yeah, you got to beat everyone. Yeah, 100%. So that's why I'm not trying to make excuses for it. Like, we have to be able to beat everyone, and that's, like, basically just how the game works. That's how Sentinels wins. You know, you have to beat everyone. Doesn't matter who you play against.
Yeah. Did you was it at LCQ? Well, or rather, was it immediately after LCQ that you thought about doing coaching stuff, or were you kind of looking at what the org is looking at for the future and what your career options are? Is this something that you really weighed up heavily and you're looking to pursue coaching, or is this just like, fuck it, we've got a bit of time, might as well dabble in this? What's the level of seriousness that you've applied to this decision for as it extends into the future?
Okay, so I'm not trying to leak anything, but this decision, I wasn't thinking about this. It was kind of like, I want to stay active and I don't want to wait till February to play, like, the next event, which is essentially, like, around in February. So it's like, I want to stay active and, like, work towards something, and this is what I want to work towards right now. But that's pretty much all I can say without leaking anything, like, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But, like, this came very quick, like, super quick, and it wasn't something that I've been thinking about for a long time at all. Trust me. So.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an interesting pivot, I think, looking over, like, your entire career of gaming as well, because typically as well, I'm not going to talk about the Overwatch League much, but in your time in the Overwatch League as well, where it was, compared to a lot of other esports, it's pretty structured when it comes to coaching with a lot of teams, but the team that you played for typically didn't have good structure in terms of the coaching over the years. So it's been, what have you been drawn upon for, like, I would say, inspiration in terms of your coaching? Is there anything that you're trying to mirror? Is there anything that you're just being like, okay, well, I'm just going to do the opposite of what I've basically been under? Like, how are you approaching it?
It's funny that you worded it that way, because, like, because the way you said that, like where we lack structure in Overwatch and stuff like that, I always knew what I wanted from a coach because we were missing that.
Yeah.
So I always think about like what I actively wanted, and that's like kind of like what I'm trying to apply right now, if that makes sense. Like I know I'm not going to
go. The
go
coach you always wanted.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
didn't go to the corner shop and never came back.
Like I want someone who's gonna exactly, dude, exactly. I want someone who's gonna apply themselves super hard and like honestly, like you should. I'm passionate, like whatever you're passionate about, you should make it like your entire life. Like dude, I don't do anything besides play Valorant right now and coach. My whole life is Valorant right now, and I'm like passionate about that, and that's fine. But like that's how it should be. If you're doing something, you should be passionate about it, and if you're not passionate about it, you should get the fuck out because like if you're involved, you're just wasting everyone's time. I'll be completely honest, and that's how I think about it. So I think from a coaching perspective, the person I probably learned the most from was Junkbuck from like our World Cup run when we actually won. That guy is probably the best coach I've ever like witnessed. That just crazy mind, and he actually helped. Like the year I left Outlaws, the year after, they had like their best season. Like in my opinion, it was their best season. They were like really strong with the players they had, which I have my own opinions on certain things, but they did like insanely well. Like I don't know, that guy is like probably the best coach I've ever had, or he's definitely the best coach I've ever had. He might be the best coach in the game, in my opinion. So we'll see. We'll see how Overwatch 2 works for them.
What kind of lessons are even applicable to bring from those kind of games? Well, something that I see on Reddit a lot. This is going down a slightly different tangent. Something I see on Reddit a lot is he's an Overwatch player, so he'll be able to teach them so much about abilities, and then when you actually look at the game, like, so people have played so much Valorant at this point, I feel like that's just such a moot point to even begin with, because everything that we know about Valorant is from playing Valorant. You don't, at least as far as I can imagine, I'm not gonna put words into your mouth, but that's how I think about things. Anyway, I'm not thinking about Overwatch when I'm thinking about Valorant games. So, do you think there's things that you even bring across from that background, or things that you could bring from being coached in Overwatch, or is it like super vague, big picture stuff?
So the things that I could bring from Overwatch are strictly how Junkbuck operated as like an individual coach, not anything that relates to the game at all. So I think like people are like, oh, he's an Overwatch player. No, that's like the biggest fucking one-head take I see on Reddit. Dude, we've been playing Valorant for over a year. We're all Valorant players. You don't go look at Sentinels, be like, they're CS players. No, they're Valorant players. They played CS. They've had way more success in Valorant. So you call them Valorant players. Like just because like you played another game prior doesn't mean that you're that player anymore. Because like let's say in like 5 years, are they still going to be calling us Overwatch players?
Hopefully
you know what I mean?
not.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I understood it when it first, like the game first came out. Maybe it was like when it was like 3 to 6 months within there. It's been over a year, right? So I don't bring things from Overwatch to coaching. I bring things from Valorant that I've learned while playing for an entire year. That's my goal. I'm a Valorant player now, and I think about the game in Valorant terms. I have not even thought about Overwatch in like over 8-10 months, like not one.
Sure.
So yeah, it's just a completely different game, and that's like if I thought about the game as Overwatch, I'd probably be absolutely trash. I'll be really good. So I don't know.
They are very fundamentally different.
Yeah.
The other thing that we were discussing on the show as well is that it feels like now is the kind of off-season time for VCT. It's when teams are trying to rebuild, like you're saying, a lot of the teams that you're scrimming are trying to trial new players, get set up for like February time when the next season, I guess, the next circuit kicks off. And there's some tournaments that you can play in if you're not a top team, but most of the scene is pretty dead right now. It's just going through a rebuilding roster kind of phase. Do you have any concern that you might miss the boat by being so involved with Sentinels? You've said that you want to play again, or at least the plan would be to play again afterwards. If things were just all right with Sentinels, you know, they didn't love what you did, but they didn't hate what you did. It was just, you know, you were relatively helpful at Champions. But then you found yourself wanting to play again. Is there any concern there that you might miss this important rebuilding phase for VCT 2022?
Yeah, I'd be worried about that, but I have a ton of offers. I'll be real with you.
Okay.
I'm honestly not worried at all. 100% I'm not worried. I think that the time that I'd be doing this anyways, no one is going to commit to anything really. No one's really hardcore committing. And the teams that are hardcore committing right now to their roster are like very scared of like losing out on players, and they're not picking up the best players. So like, I think once you see some of these rosters being finalized already, you're going to look at them and you're going to be like, is that the best move that they could have made? Like, that's how I think about it. And that's like I've always been like straight up, brutally honest. And that's just how I feel about it. So, I mean, I would be worried, like you were saying, if I didn't have offers. I have offers, but yeah, I'm not worried about that at all. So
okay.
I'm just Yeah, this was by far the best thing I could have done right now to stay active. That's why I want to stay active and I want to keep doing things. I don't want to break.
Right.
I want to learn, and like, who better to learn from than the best team, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, you're getting an inside look into one of your former opponents' scrim environments, atmospheres, all of that kind of stuff. Can you describe any differences, like any, that little secret spark? What do you think is important in Sentinel's success from what you've witnessed so far, contrasting it to what you were doing on FaZe? I don't mean flame the players you were playing with, but I mean just in terms of how the team was set up or how they communicate, how they think about things. What's the most important thing, do you think?
Okay, so this is I've said this before in my stream already, so it's not like a big shocker, but on FaZe we had individual players that wanted to play a different way than how the whole team not how the whole team, but they wanted to play their own way because they have had success with it, and we've never been on the same page besides that first Masters run, which was when we played that breach comp and we ran it down together, all of us. We always had this weird structure where we're playing around our own individual value. And we should have been just playing and operating as a team instead, and we just weren't doing that because people wanted to play just how they felt comfortable. So that's essentially it. But for Sentinels, for instance, they are such a unit. They're such a team. Everything they do is for each other. They're not greedy at all. They're not selfish at all. It's not even about a greed or selfishing, because now it sounds like I'm flaming my old team, but it's not about that. It's just that they just understand how each player wants to play the game, and they just play around each other so well. It's just that's the best way to word it, essentially.
Right.
Yeah, they found a way to play the game early on, and they just ran with it. That's the best way to explain it. And they've just developed their teamwork since the very beginning of the game. So
when you're looking at coming in to help them for champions, do you have any specific goals? Are there things from that Berlin run, which I'm assuming you watched because it was the biggest tournament going on at the time, you're not part of it? What were are there any things that you think, big picture, obviously not leaking stuff, that you want to focus on to come into champions? You talked a little bit earlier about their read on the meta. Are there other topics like that where you think, okay, this is an area I can really help?
Yeah, so I think they addressed this on stream too, but we talked about it. Everyone wants to play comfort picks and play what they're comfortable with, and they did that in that Berlin run, which is essentially why they had a bad read on the meta. You should be comfortable, but you also are sometimes forced to play the meta. It's like playing, for instance, it's like playing DPS comps when there was a goats meta for Overwatch. You know what I mean? You have to play goats. You have to play what the meta is, and you have to run with it. And I feel right now they want to play what the meta is. So what we think the meta is what we're gonna play. That's kind of the mindset for it right now. That's what they think went wrong. And honestly, watching their whole tournament back already, I can honestly agree that's what went wrong too. They were just getting out utiled, right? They didn't have enough util to match Sky and stuff like that. So they essentially if you just don't have enough util and they're just out utiling you, the enemy team is, you're just gonna lose. There's nothing, you can't even take gunfights. So that's what I saw from them, at least. And it wasn't they were getting outplayed at all. They just more util just out it will outplay you. So that's pretty much my biggest take from Berlin.
This is actually, I mean, what we're showing on the screen right now is one of the maps in which they did try to go towards the meta, actually, with Tens playing Raze and Sick on Sky. Yeah. But at that point, it felt like they just didn't have enough practice on the meta comps because they'd been doing so much of the other stuff on other maps.
This comp's comfort picks, 100%. This comp right here is all comfort picks. It's double duelist and then initiator, smokes, Viper, right? But they're still missing you're still missing a sentinel role. You're still missing an anchor role. It's this seems like a comfort comp to me in my perspective. I haven't talked about Split to them about it because I think they already know what they did wrong. But for instance, Envy's comp, this is the exact comp we ran when we played. That comp became the meta comp for all of LCQ. I think the only team that didn't play this comp was Cloud9. And Cloud9 had their own way of playing the game because I think I don't know if they played KO on this map, but I know they played Raze. I think they played Raze Sky and no KO.
Yeah, they played Raze on this map. But,
yeah. But yeah, so for instance, Envy's comp is super similar to how we played and what we played, but we had a little bit different. Obviously our defaults were way different than them. So, but this is what the meta became, and I think in my opinion, the comp is the reason why they lost, because there's a lot of I think it's hard to have, in my opinion, I think it's really hard to run double duelist in this meta, and they're playing double duelist here, and I feel that's a reason why they lost. So. They're losing info essentially playing double duelist. So.
Are you going to be going to Berlin with them?
Yeah. They actually come here tomorrow, the 14th, to LA, and a little boot camp here, and then we leave the 20th to go to Berlin, and I'll be there until the event's over.
Mm. Who are you looking forward to playing against in Europe? Do you watch the European teams as like to see what their read is on the meta and that kind of stuff before you go and scrim against them? Or do you feel like it's more valuable to just get it hands-on when you're actually there?
So I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't watch what the European teams run. So I watched the Berlin run, and I'm not really taking too much into this Red Bull European tournament because I feel like, personally, I feel like if they're showing how they want to play and how like their tendencies are, like let's say for instance like how they want to use Viper Wall every round, like let's say Liquid or something, right? Then they're already showing how they're going to play on stage. So I feel like they're not doing that. They kind of just played this event for fun. So I'm mostly watching Berlin, but I'm gonna all of my real notes and everything is going to be from when we scrim because every team changes, right? So when we scrim in Berlin and practice against all these teams, that's where all the notes and all the data is going to come from. So that's pretty much how I'm like figuring out how these other teams will play. But yeah.
Are there any European teams that you've looked at and you like the way that they play, or they've caught your eye at all?
You cannot dislike what Gambit does. Like they're just phenomenal. The way they play the game is phenomenal. They have good reads. They have really like the biggest thing is they're patient. They're super patient. They never feel antsy to make a move. They could be up 5v3 and they're still holding the angle that they think is like proper. They won't run down. They won't like because what if there's a guy in the corner? They don't do stuff like that. They don't take any risk. It's like they're just super structured, really good. I think have you ever watched like football? Like you watch Patriots or anything? Like Bill Belichick had this
Not
interview.
really. Honestly, I mean, you're talking to two Brits here.
Okay.
When you say football, I'm like, yeah, I mean, World Cup qualifiers are going on right now. England playing against, who were they playing against? Andorra or something? Albania?
So I'm a Jets fan and I hate the Patriots. But what the Patriots coach said was like so smart one day. Like they lost to a team and then they were focusing on the next team. That's the hardest like team to play against. Essentially, the first match you play is always going to be the hardest. Just the next match is the hardest. The next match is the hardest. You never get too far ahead of yourself. So I could say like Gambit will be the hardest match because they just won, but that'd be dumb. I think whoever we play first, second, third, leading up to the finals is always going to be the hardest match for us. So just focus it, go one by one, and that's just how you win, right? You can't get too far ahead of yourselves. Because I've done that in the past in Overwatch. I've done that in the past in VALORANT too. It's just a bad mindset to have. I think that's something that I've learned over playing experience, or like I've learned over the time with my experience I have playing. So just focusing one by one. I think that it's like a very. I know you guys want juice. I know you want like who's the hardest team, Gambit or Liquid?
No.
I can't give that. I can't give that. But I think Gambit and Liquid are really strong. So we'll see.
I like in general hearing the thought process of people as well, though, Rawkus. So I enjoy hearing those little snippets of like things that inspire you too, because people think in extraordinarily different ways. Like, while some person might have found that really inspirational, another person might just be like, "Well, that's fucking dumb" or whatever, you know. Like, there's people have very different ways of viewing the world and viewing the way that they everyone interprets things through their own experiences too. I wanted to ask you a follow up on that though too, which is, do you find it easier to think about your own experiences and advice when you're not in the server? Because I would imagine it's easier to try and conceptualize and give advice and know that it's good advice compared to following it in the moment. Even if you know that you should be doing something, if you're the player, it can feel very hard, like your intuition's pulling you in a different direction compared to your brain. As a coach, do you feel like you'll find it more easy to try and drill the proper advice into players?
Yeah, like I definitely okay. So this is the thing: when you're playing, everything's always high emotion, right? Like what I mean by that is that you're like, if you're playing and you're passionate, you're invested. So like you have emotions when it comes to it. So like let's say you do something wrong and someone gives you feedback about it. First, like you're gonna be like, I thought I had the right read or something like that. If you made a mistake, and you're not gonna like the first process is not gonna be like, oh, this guy is like trying to help me. It's gonna be like, I thought I had the right read, so I should have done this. Instead, it's just like I my point is I'm trying to get to is that like it's very I could very unemotionally like give advice to people that I already know. Like I knew the mistakes that I made in VALORANT, but sometimes emotions get to you and like you keep making the same mistakes, right? For instance, I know how to play. Like I feel like I'm very smart when it comes to this game. Like I understand what I need to say and like how to give like feedback to other players and stuff like that. For instance, and like I'll know what to say. It's like hard. I know what I'm trying to say, but it's hard to like spit it out.
Sure,
but
sure.
Essentially, like I know exactly what feedback what feedback a player needs, like how to word it. That's
right,
like basically from my perspective from playing. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give that feedback, and I feel like people are really receptive to the way you word things.
Yes,
like
of
if
course.
it's like yeah, exactly. You have to be. I'm particularly bad at wording things, but I'm very careful when I word things, especially when players are playing. If I take a timeout, I'm like, yo, we should do this, or like very vague stuff like that. But like if I have to be like descriptive, like you made a mistake, you should do this instead. I make sure I word it really properly, but I know what to say to people. Is basically what I'm trying to say. Like yeah, it's never in bad blood ever. So that's the thing. That's the biggest thing. Like people have to understand that like any feedback is criticism, and criticism. The only reason why people get criticism is because you want that person to play better. You want that person to be better. That's how I always. That's why like I never understood like negative criticism. It's all constructive in my opinion. So
depends how you deliver it though as well, which is one of the things that I think that you would be very good at in that kind of position, especially if you know a lot of the players and you're comfortable in that manner. Yeah. I always thought that was actually when it came to this move, is the one thing that made a lot of sense to me was you being quite a charismatic person and getting along well with a lot of people. And it's one of the core qualities that you need in a good coach is how to deliver feedback, how to get along with everybody. Would you would agree with that?
Yeah, I feel like I'm just a very like high energetic person, but I'm real too. So like people, if I ever do weird things like improperly to people, they know that I have good intentions, but like that's just like that's why it hasn't been like any arguments ever when it comes to like stuff the way I've worded it. If people ask me like, did I mean to say it that way? I'm like, no, I just have a bad way of wording it. But people know that I'm like, I have like good intentions and good heart, and like I'm passionate about what I do. So like being charismatic and being friends with everyone, and like people understanding like you're like what you want for like if you're playing for the team or coaching for the team, as long as people understand the goal in the end day, people like will be okay to the feedback or criticism, no matter how it is, if it's good or bad, stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and I expect from the Sentinels' point of view as well that was one of the reasons that they want you on board too, because if they're thinking about getting a coach and they pick up somebody who's more of a standard coaching pick, who's a career coach, for example, but isn't tight-knit with their themselves in terms of that friendship or just having a way of being able to deliver the feedback in a way that they'll be able to process well, then you could mess with that entire system that they've currently got set up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say yeah.
No, go
on. No, it's like I know for a fact they didn't want any Joe Schmo coach. They didn't want no random like person who hasn't had experience in Valorant. Because like I said, they know how to play the game. They wanted someone from top experience, like currently, not like in the past.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like I'm playing so much Valorant right now because I want to be at the top of the game no matter what it is. Like I'm actively playing right now. My goal is to literally be rank 1 and like I know it's ranked, but my goal is to be rank 1 and ranked. It's very easy for me to grind the games.
Rank 1 in Europe? When you go there for boot camp?
I'm definitely not going to be playing that much because I need to be putting a lot of effort in like watching other teams. Like right now, like I said, because of teams are rebuilding like stuff like that, I'm not researching NA teams.
Sure.
We won't go out and actively practice against enemy. We won't go out and actively practice against C9 right now. They could be our enemies, so we have to wait for the bracket because we don't even know the bracket currently.
Of course, yeah. I mean, we don't even know the format currently as well, right? So
we know it's double a limb.
Yeah, but it could be like a part of it that's double eliminate. Who the hell knows?
You never know. So we're just like taking everything right now with a grain of salt. But my goal once we get to Berlin is put a lot of effort into VOD review and like studying other teams because I want the players to not think about anything besides playing their own game. And if I see something that they need to think about, like for instance, like this is how they pistol strat, or they do the same thing over and over when it comes to pistols, or this person's like, for instance, like this, like let's say like C-Ned's always opping this position the second he buys an op. Players have tendencies like that where they buy their first op and they go like, let's say A Long Haven. They'll sit that position no matter what. They'll never go C Long Haven on their first op purchase. Every player has like these weird tendencies and they do that because it's a comfort thing. That's like how I'm going to study about the game. So I'm going to watch other teams just like that and see exactly all that stuff, just so the players that are playing don't have to think about it at all. I don't want them to think about like what could go wrong. I'll give them everything that they can, or everything that I can give them rather.
Yeah. Do you imagine yourself being very heavily invested in counter-stratting as well as developing the team? Because the way that you were kind of bringing it up earlier, you were saying a lot of the teams are going to, a lot of the players on the team, are very heavily involved in their own game, in Sentinels' game. When it comes to counter-stratting in the past, that was previously pretty much Shaz's domain, and then he would feed it what he thought was appropriate to the rest of the team and do a lot of the rest of the calls on the fly. How do you see that process working moving forward for counter-stratting? Because a lot of what you're talking about here would come under that role, but I imagine Shaz would probably want to be involved with much more of it than the other players because he is the IGL, and he's going to have to make a lot of those comms in the game.
Yeah, so remember how I was talking about FaZe earlier and how we had like, for instance, Corey and Entree really wanted to like fight. They wanted to run in and fight a lot. So it was up to me to like figure out how to like position myself in a way to like get value, I guess. because I would use all my utility for them. That's kind of what I like think about the game when it comes to counter-stratting. Like I knew where to put myself fast to catch someone else's rotate because they think they have a timing because they thought like we were running in. Like for instance, like it's hard to explain, but I would put myself in positions in my own way to counter-strat people. I love counter-stratting. So my point I'm trying to bring is I love counter-stratting. I think it's like a good way to completely screw over a team's momentum or like their game plan and like make them second guess things. Obviously, I'm not going to apply so much counter-stratting because like the second you do that, you're just not playing your own game. But like I want to focus on like without leaking too much. I want to focus on like counter-stratting specific like rounds, like a bonus round or like an eco round or something like that. Like I want to focus on like figuring out how teams like playing. Obviously, there's so much you can do with because you won't have full data on every team, but you will have enough data to see like tendencies like that, and I can make my own ideas of counter strats like that. So that's like
right.
I'm not trying to leak anything. It's all so vague, but like I will definitely help the team with counter stratting, and every like person who wants to be involved with it, like for instance, like you said, Shaz, probably will want to be involved with it, and we'll talk about it and see what he thinks about it too, stuff like that. So
yeah.
Yep.
I'm intrigued to see how the boot camp in Europe goes as well. Those things always interest the shit out of me. Seeing the teams playing beforehand, people losing their minds. People were looking at Berlin, they were like scraping tracker.gg for people's ranked wins and stuff like that. They lose it by the time you get to a big tournament like that.
Yeah. I remember a lot of people were watching like the Korean teams play because no one knew what the Korean teams were going to do. So they were kind of like a dark horse team. A lot of people knew like what the European teams and how they played. Like everyone was studying like Gambit and Liquid, or not Liquid, Gambit and
Ascend.
Thank you. I could not process that. Everyone was studying those teams, but they were worried about the Korean teams, and the Korean teams actually had really good rounds. Like, was it Crazy Raccoons that went up like 7-1 against Gambit on Ascend with Viper? With Viper, for instance, and no one plays Viper. No one plays Viper on Ascent at all. So they kind of like won a lot of, even though Gambit won that map. Like stuff like that you need to like focus on. So people are I'm gonna start looking at tracker.gg to see what these players are playing to make sure, because players will play. This is the thing. Players play their role in ranked on their maps. They just do that because they just want to get the reps in. Like, sure, So like, I mean, obviously, I'm not gonna look at a Sova player who's gonna play Sova on every goddamn map. You know what I mean? But I'm gonna look at like the Flex player and the Sentinel player and be like, he's not playing Killjoy here. He might be playing Cypher, or he might be playing what's it called, or Viper. And I'm like, if he's playing Viper, then I'm like, they're probably gonna be playing Viper on this map. Like that's just how it works when you're a player. It's just you have to practice it and get the reps in. So.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. There's not going to be much good practice up until 2 weeks before the event for a lot of teams.
It's because. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you were probably about to finish my point that I was thinking of, which is just all the teams are rebuilding, and the teams are going to be going to Berlin, presumably when you guys are going there, like what is it, the 20th of November?
Yeah, we go on we travel the 20th, get through the 21st, then get our quarantine. So probably start practicing on the 21st. I haven't even booked scrims for that day yet because you have to get in contact with all these teams. So we'll figure out how that goes. I'm probably gonna.
You don't even know who you're playing.
No idea. So that's like another thing about booking scrims. Like you have to be careful who you play. You have to be careful who you book against too in Europe, because like a lot of people have friends with other teams. So like VODs get leaked very often, and LCQ our VODs 100% got leaked. I'm like, this is like a little bit of a juice, but people are anti-stratting our pistol strats. Take that like how you want. Like the very first round of the game, they had like a full stack setup. It was like someone got leaked our VOD directly to people. So we have to be careful who we scrim going into that, because European teams might leak to other European teams, and like Korean teams might leak to other Korean teams. So we just have to be careful who we scrim. But obviously, like you have to be able to scrim the top teams eventually. So we just have to figure out what we want to show and stuff like that. It's like kind of like chess. You just have to. You don't want to show your full hand, but you want to show like some of the moves.
Sure. So. Yeah. You got any expectations for dark horses coming into champs for any of the teams? I know you said that you're taking it one step at a time, but in terms of like other regions, because there's a lot of teams. It's like 16 teams are going to be going to this event themselves. Are there any teams that you think? Obviously, you want to give your full prep for whoever you're up against on a given day, but any regions in particular? Because a lot of different regions have a lot of very interesting and different looks. Like a lot of the Southeast Asian teams have been playing some wacky stuff. Europe in general as a region tends to have a very different style compared to other regions as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, recency bias, maybe a little bit bias on my end, but I actually think like I think Cloud9's kind of like a dark horse team.
Yeah.
They're playing comps that are not traditional to NA. Like they're forcing KO and Sentinel.
Yeah.
Like for instance, like I know 100 Thieves played KO, but they played no Sentinel role. But like Cloud9's playing like KO, Sentinel. They're just they're mixing it up. They're not playing as much Sky when they play KO, but they're playing KO over Sky. And it's like they just have like a really good read on how they want to play the game, and they have like really their success on it so far. I mean, I know it's just LCQ, right?
Sure.
But they looked freaking good. They looked really
they
good.
were heating up towards the end.
Yeah, they looked really good and confident. But I want to see how that transitions into a LAN, because I think some of their players haven't played a LAN. Some, maybe Leaf or a couple other people. But I don't even know if that'll matter as much, right? So like, that's just my dark horse team, I guess. But I have to look at every team exactly from like Korea and Japan, like all these teams. I have to just look at all these teams. I've looked at mostly European and NA right now.
Sure, yeah.
Because those are the teams I expect to play early on. Like I don't know our bracket right now, but I'm assuming that we're gonna play those teams, and that's the ones that I have the most info on right now. I don't have any info on these other teams right now, like from like China or Korea. Like I just have no idea. Even some Brazilian teams I have info on too, but mainly focusing on like the teams that have had success already on LAN.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, the biggest threats that might be coming up.
The biggest threats first, and then I can focus on if, let's say we play someone from Brazil first, like I'll focus on that. You know what I mean? Like it's just I just have to take it as we go. So
okay.
If you're not intending to scrim, let's say Envy, while you're here, and Envy also didn't participate in anything since Berlin, and then if they don't scrim against you on the lead up into champs as well, how do you deal with that from a coaching perspective, do you think, or from a player perspective trying to make a plan against a team? It's really unusual going into champs. The blend of, you've got teams like Fnatic who peaked at Reykjavik and have been playing they've been playing in everything they can, but they haven't gone deep in a lot of stuff. So there's a lot of data, but it's like a lot of the time it's them just kind of middle of the pack. And then on the other side of things, you've got Envy and Vision Strikers who, I mean, even Vision Strikers played 3 games at Berlin and that's it. That's it. Yep. They just haven't played anything since then. That feels like an extraordinary task to try and be prepared for a match like that.
So from my perspective on playing, when we had to play against a team that we didn't have much info on, for instance, like right now, if we were to go off first and play against Envy, both teams haven't played since Berlin, that's when you're really going to like put all of the work into yourself as a team and trust like what you've prepared is the right like preparation for that, and hope that you make the better in-game adaptations. Because like you can't prepare for them, you can't counter-strat them, right? But you can prepare like more stuff for yourself and have more things to fall back on. That's basically how you have to like follow up on a team that you don't have info on. Because not every team has info on every single person, or every single team rather. But like I'm very confident in like our players to be making the right decision when both teams aren't even playing grounds. Sorry, my dog is sneezing like crazy. But
I wondered what that was.
Yeah, she's like out here going wild. But no, it's just stuff like that. Like you just have to prepare a lot of stuff and have things to fall back on in case it goes wrong. That's essentially what you have to do when you don't have info on other teams.
Yeah, that does seem like an area where you've just got to kind of work on yourself. I know that, for example, I mean, I keep thinking back to Sentinels' run and them getting taken out by Envy in their run through Berlin, and how much of a surprise that was, considering they'd just been dominating them whenever it came to domestic tournaments as well, and their success all throughout the rest of the year too. What was your read on that? I know that you said that it was meta stuff as well, but they'd been able to beat them domestically even when they were playing their same kind of stuff. From what I can remember, there weren't any drastic, like compositional changes heading into it. They'd still been able to beat Envy with Yay before that. And then at the tournament, it just doesn't work out. When you kind of process those results, is part of it like, well, I guess they just had a bad day. It's a variance in form.
Yeah, so they actually did change something from when they did the qualifier and they beat Envy originally. When we were playing our qualifier, what was it? The qualify for Berlin, rather.
Right.
They beat them, and they were playing Raze instead of Sky. So they swapped to Sky for Berlin.
Right.
But it's just like you beat a team so much, you're confident in what you're going to do, and then they change up a little bit, and they start hyper-focusing on you.
Yeah.
They just... I want to say that Envy had more info on Sentinels than Sentinels had on Envy, because Envy changed their come up. You know what I mean? It's like stuff like that help them win, right? I think.
Right.
So, but like now it's like an even playing ground because they have no idea what would be happening if we played them right now. Everything's different, right? It's completely different, and it's not so recent. Because I think the qualifier was 3 weeks before they played LAN, so it was very recent. You can only change so much in 3 weeks. Like for instance, 100 Thieves played. They played like this KO comp, and no one played that comp. they qualified for Berlin, and then they had to play the same comp again on stage because you don't have that much time to change things up. You know, it's like very quick that you're practicing and playing. So it takes a lot of time to develop these like comps and play like cheesy strats and stuff like that, which I think 100 Thieves did, and they didn't have a lot to fall back on when they got to stage because they had to play the same thing over and over. And people expected like certain things. They're like, oh, they're gonna run KO here, they're gonna do this dagger, etc. You can mix and match it, but like it's gonna be pretty straight, like pretty. I don't know how to explain it, but it's gonna be pretty obvious what they're gonna do. It's like essentially when we were playing that Breach comp in Zerging back for the Masters 1 run, people knew how we were gonna play because we had to play Breach. So it's just stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I understand. And that's what makes it so impressive, I think, when teams like Cloud9 are able to change their compositions halfway through an event as well. When they were going into that game on Ascent against XZ, and they swapped back to playing the Raze and Sage kind of comp instead of the KO, I thought was a very interesting adaptation when they just essentially wind the clock back, but it's so far back since they played that comp that it catches people off guard. When you're a team like Sentinels, I assume they have many, many, many different strategies all the way back to the beginning of the game that they, in theory, could bring out if they wanted to throw a bit of a curveball in there.
There's definitely a lot of old stuff that has been brought up that people would never expect. Stuff like that. There's also a lot of new stuff that I have. This is the thing. I'm super excited to play. No, I'm not playing, but I'm super excited for us to play on stage because I have a lot of good ideas that people didn't get to see that I'm going to use from FaZe, like 100%. Like I'm going to use all of these good ideas that no one's seen. And you can't even prepare for them because we didn't get to show a lot of the maps that we played. We lost pretty quick. And I think we were pretty well prepared, but we just didn't execute at all, like when it came to match time. But I think that like I'll be able to give this team that already plays the game so well so many different things to think, like not think about, but so many different things to fall back on and also use if they want to. Because they make really freaking good decisions. They're super, like they wouldn't have won. They wouldn't have been so dominant if they didn't make good decisions, right?
Yeah.
They know how to play the game. I think they just ran out of ideas a little bit and they had the wrong read on a meta at a time. So I'm just helping them create new stuff and I'm giving them new stuff too. So I think like, I don't think that issue will be a problem. So I don't know. I'm really excited to show some of the stuff we have on stage.
Yeah,
I want to see if it works. I want to see if it works because like, I know it should work if that makes sense, and maybe it didn't work for us on FaZe certain times because certain reasons, but I know it. I don't know from practice already. I already know some things are gonna work. So that's I'm not trying to leak. I know I keep like being very vague. I don't know. It's like,
no, I like it. I
want to leak, but
You're
I can't.
tickling my balls.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm playing with you right now, man.
No, I think it's interesting because Sentinels are never a team that have really used cheesy strats before. Yep. They're not a team that does that. I mean, Fnatic did that quite a lot in their Iceland run. Who else? I mean, Vision Strikers obviously does a bunch of that set play kind of stuff.
Who was it? Newturn doing some real cheesy shit.
Cheesy stuff too.
Breach ult into the showstopper.
Yeah, the wall bangs through like A short on Haven. Like the cheesy stuff is normally done
really
to Sentinels.
Yeah, I know. Like Sentinels always just focus on outplaying their teams completely and just like being the better team. Like they didn't need the cheesy stuff to be the cheesy strats or like set plays to be the better team. But I feel like as the game evolves and there's more utility and stuff like that, you need stuff like that to fall back on just to win around and put a team on eco. Like you win a round off of one cheesy play and put the team like on eco, you have 2 rounds right there. That's just how you have to think about the game. So even though that's not naturally how they play, they want to use stuff like that actively. So it's just going to be anything that I can add like that will be helpful because they're obviously not going to only do stuff like that. They're going to I'm just trying to give them more stuff to use. So
I've got a final question for you unless you got any for the stuff to talk about here, Rawkus. Sentinels have been notorious for never calling tactical pauses. They finally now have a coach. Do you have the authority to hit the big fat red button that says pause the game? We're gonna pause. I'm talking to you, Shaz. Here's a moment to just calm down. Do you have the authority to turn that key and fire the nuclear option?
I do. There's actually something really funny that's why I'm laughing. So like the first thing that like I got talked to about was, fuck, we're gonna have someone that finally hit a tactical pause finally. Like they actually said that to me and I'm like, I just started laughing. It was like, well, I'm like, how do you not call tac pauses? Like I think sometimes you could be on a roll, like you're up like 7-1 or something, and like you call a tac pause and you just ice the other team. I've never seen a team call a tac pause and then the other team instantly call another tac pause at the same time before the round even starts. Dude, I think like icing teams, like you make them think so long or like stay static, like make a team pause for 2 minutes that's struggling, they'll probably fucking think like way too much and overthink something. That's how people are. They just naturally think more and more. The longer you get someone to think when they're struggling, they'll probably make the wrong decision. So I might try to do stuff like that. I might try to like, I might just call a 2-minute pause just to troll the other team. Yep. The best thing would be is if we were up 12-0, I call attack pause. Like
just PM at that point.
Let's talk about it, guys. Let's
Okay, so if we've gone from a team that does never call tag pauses to one that's gonna just troll people by calling them.
No, I like that. I'm gonna troll, but I think it would be funny, right?
It would be funny. It would be entertaining. I think it was Astralis that used to call stuff like that, or Carrigan used to call those kind of pauses. I think
that's it works. I'm telling you. Like,
it did.
As a player, I know it would fuck with people. Like I want to fuck with other people. I think it'd be funny.
I also want to test your ability to deliver the classic coach speech. So I'm going to give you a scenario, okay? We're going to close out the episode. I'm going to give you a scenario. It focuses around Bren in his ranked games, all right? So I'm going to put you in the headspace, all right? This is a real story, too. Last night, Bren's playing against a Jett. It's on Icebox. He's absolutely getting boomed by this Jett. Everything he does, she's in his head. Is she cheating? What's going on? So we're going to imagine this is a match scenario. Bren's getting absolutely boomed. He can't figure out a solution, and you can see it. You can see as the coach, oh, God, this guy needs a talking to. He's in his own head. So you hit the big red button. You hit the nuclear option. You're like, all right, guys, let's take a second. Rawkus, what do you say to Bren to get him out of his mental fuzz?
All right, Bren, listen. Are you ready?
I'm listening.
I know things have not been going right for you. You maybe have an off game, but you got to focus and rely on your team. Your team will help you. Even though you're struggling and this Jett is fucking shitting on you. Obviously, I'm not going to say it like that. But this Jett is taking over and you're not able to find the right timings. Trust your team. Your team will take over. You can fall back on your team. Just, bait Zoms a little bit more.
I'll bait Zoms.
Your team a little bit more. Zoms specifically. Only Zoms.
Okay, only Zoms.
This is when Bren is playing instead of Dapper for Sentinels, an emergency sub.
I'll make sure I play right behind Zoms when he's anchoring, and I'll only swing when Zoms takes contact.
Let him make first contact, then swing. Yep.
Okay,
100%.
that sounds good. Thank you, Coach.
All right, genius.
Rawkus.
Okay, well, there's the first strat that dictated down from on high. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for spending the time with us as well. I like hearing the insight fresh from it, because I know there's a lot of people who are mind blown by this move, and I think it's going to be a really interesting one to follow as well. I think it's going to be a cool one. It's our first time when we've really seen. I think you actually might be the first pro to move into coaching in Valorant, no? It feels like it would be. I can't think of anyone else. Oh, well, no, of course. There've been some like... the Glow from Vision Strikers, actually.
Oh, yeah.
He went from playing to coaching.
I was trying to think.
Definitely the first Western player.
Yeah.
I think Sliggy played very, very early on.
He wasn't even playing in the beta tournament with them, though. He was still a coach in beta. You can't tell me he can't be a player turned coach in beta.
I'm the only coach right now that has Tier 1 experience and also has played in the finals, so...
There you go. Okay, well, that's something to write down on your CV. Okay, appreciate you talking to us, though. Thank you very much for spending the time.
Thanks for having me, man.
And maybe we'll have some more back chats. We will definitely have some more episodes coming at you before Champs, as well as we hopefully get the groups unveiled and we do our top 20 players. Maybe we'll do a top 20 coaches as well. We're not going to do that. That's a horrendous idea. But we'll have a lot more content coming for you as well. So if you enjoyed this, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.